One of the things I've learned through my years of working as a web developer is that performing website reviews is a very important task. And there's a lot of different reasons why we might want to create and perform a website review. For example, you might be looking at a potential client and they give you a request. What types of things could you do to improve my website? Well, you're going to need to review it in order to tell them what to do. Maybe you need to review a coworker's work. And one of the things that your company does is before a website goes live, it gets reviewed by outside people, maybe someone who didn't work on a project, because a fresh set of eyes can see things that maybe someone who was very close to the project doesn't see. Maybe you need a review for a third-party vendor, and you're looking to see, I want to take this vendor's information and apply it to my website, but I need to see how does it work in other existing websites. Is this going to be effective for me? You'll even want to be able to review your own work. Constantly check and say, what can I do better? How can I improve myself? Maybe this was the best I could do 6 months ago or 2 years ago, but now I can do more because I've learned more. Maybe I think about, hey, I've got new types of clients that are coming. What can I be doing to reach out to them? And so when you look at those types of things, you can find more. So depending upon who you're doing the website review for, and the type of website it is going to vary based upon what you are going to review. I don't review the same thing for everyone because each website is a little bit different. There are a few things that I typically include, although not all of them, and so I want to go over those real quickly with you. The first of which is the design, and this is how appealing or how nice is your website. Remember, you may not be the target audience for the website. So put on the persona or the idea of who's going to be visiting this website and is this a good website? I'll give you a perfect example. I built a website for an independent pharmacy. They knew that most of their clients were 55 or older. Now, why did that matter? Well, when I looked at their existing website and when I went in and built their website, I put myself in the mindset of a 55-plus-year-old person. And my first thought was, well, like me, they probably have glasses and they probably haven't got them updated like they needed to. And so one of the first things we did is we made the fonts a little bit bigger for every page. What did that do? Well, quite simply, it made the text bigger and made it so it's easier for people to read. And knowing if you're a little bit older that your eyesight is something that does go, it was an important, small, subtle thing. Was it something that I would want to see on my personal webpage if I was viewing it as the customer? Probably not. But for people who were 10 or 15 or more years older than me, it was a perfect decision. Now, the design of a website is very subjective, and I wanted to remind you of that. So whenever you're going to point out something, make sure you back up your claims as to why. Let me give you a perfect example. I was doing this for a class once, and I had 2 students who both reviewed the same website. One student said, I liked the website and listed all the reasons why they liked the design of the website. The second person came up shortly after them and said, I'm reviewing the same website that that person did, but I didn't like it. And they listed all the reasons why they didn't like it. Turns out they both got an A on the assignment. They were both correct. It depended upon the perspective of the person. And that's why knowing that audience and getting it right is so important. Now, they incorporated other aspects just besides how did it look, and that's a whole different story. But it also, I think, illustrates the point that no matter how good your website is, you can always find room for improvement. If you look at a site like Amazon.com, they make over 100 updates to their website every year. You might go, well, wait a second, how many updates could they perform? But when they run these little experiments, most of them are small, but they test it to see, does this make our website perform better? Does it sell more product? Does it create a better user experience? And from that, they decide what to keep and what to toss. Like I said, over 100 changes a year. The second thing we want to look at is user friendliness. How easy is it for the user to maneuver around the website. I went to one website that no matter what you did, you had to use the back button in order to go back to the home page to then go to the next page. That was annoying. So simple things like a consistent navigation that's always available is very important. Things like that font size, was it big enough so that they could read it, is important. Things like, do I have to have a special browser or plugin for my browser in order to use this website? Or can I just use it with anything? You'd be surprised the number of times that I go to a website that I don't use the browser I prefer. I'll use Microsoft Edge. Why? Because it's not popular, but it still needs to work in it. So yes, I will test it in popular browsers like Safari or Chrome, but I'm also going to test in non-popular browsers just to make sure that people can still use it. And like I said, I don't want to have to require people to use a plugin if I can avoid it. I'm going to look for how fast is a website. If I click on a page and I've got to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds in order for the next page to come up, I'm going to get frustrated. I'm not going to like that. Other people aren't either. So how responsive is it? Is it fast? Is it quick? Do I have to load 50 pages in order to view one article? Or does the whole thing come up at one time? This is part of my usefulness. How easy is it to use? It's something that end users really care about. And in fact, they care about it so much that search engines now weigh the speed of your website in determining where should it rank in the overall list of web pages for a given search term. And if you have two websites that are basically equal, the search engine will then look at speed and go, oh, nope, the faster one's going to be the one that's going to get the nod. It's going to be the one that's going to display in the top 10 results. So that leads us into the next thing, search engine optimization. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a future module, but I'm going to be looking for the types of things that doesn't matter when you're starting to build a web page. Is it optimized? And there's different types of optimization, both internal and external. And so I'll be looking at things like that. Now, for some websites, this does not matter. For example, the internal training website we had, or the internal help desk that we used, you couldn't access them from outside our network. It didn't matter what Google thought because Google couldn't get there. So, like I said, not all these are always used, but if I have an external facing website, you can be guaranteed that I'm going to care about how does this look from a search engine perspective. Another thing that I'm going to pick is going to be security. And depending upon how much access I have to the website will depend upon how deep my security is going to test. But I will be looking for, is it secure? I'll check things like, for example, have you blocked certain ports, or do you have bad plugins installed that are known security vulnerabilities? This is where being an IT person or a CS person can come in handy if you have some network security experience. Now, typically when I have students do a website review, it is only 1 or 2 pages long. When I do it professionally, it tends to be between 5 and 12 pages long. You might go, well, how come it's so different? Well, it depends upon which of those aspects before that we mentioned. It incorporates how good or how bad the website is and how many screenshots I need to take in order to show it. So what do I do when I start to build my website review? Well, I think about which one of those aspects or aspects do I want to include inside my review. Then I think about, okay, who's going to be the user persona for that particular website? I put myself kind of in that mindset or that type of person's shoes. Okay. Is this a baseball fan? Is this a single parent? Is this, someone who's looking to order something online? I think about what it is, and then I start to view the website from that perspective. When I start making my comments, they start off pretty rough, and I just think about all the different things I want to incorporate. But I try not to be too blunt when I start to actually write it up. Why? Well, I don't know who created this website. And I have had experience where a person built the website themselves. They did the best job they could. They were very proud of their work, and they were very defensive of it. Now, in some cases, these people were not professional web developers or designers. They didn't have any experience with it, and they did the best job that they could, but they needed some professional help. And so we wanted to kind of showcase the good parts as well as some parts that need improvement. So I always try to include some good things I like about the site. Sometimes that's really easy. Sometimes that is a challenge, but you always want to do it. And when you list your recommendations, remember, you don't necessarily know who created that website. So make sure you don't insult the reader. You don't want to say, this is horrible. How could you ever created this or allowed this to be put in place? Likewise, you don't want to talk down to them. Even if they didn't do it, you want to explain things that they can understand, but not treat them as a child. So careful with how you might talk to them, because I've seen students come out, be very blunt, and turn off the audience. One of the key things I recommend, and I personally do, is anytime I see something that's a problem, I recommend a fix for it. Remember the website I mentioned just a few minutes ago, one where the audience age was 55 plus. I recognize that fact. I recognize that the font was a little bit small, and so I suggested this is a quick and easy fix. It wasn't anything that was detrimental, but we talked about why it was important to fix that. Never suggest a problem without a solution. Maybe that solution is needing to go to another third party to get some assistance. I recently built a website for a client, and it had some functionality they needed that I couldn't do. So I went and found a third party that I could incorporate into our website to make it so it would work. The client was happy that I was willing to say that, hey, I can't do this. I was honest with them. They were even happier that I was able to research and find a third party that could come in and work with us in order to make that project successful. Finally, think about, how is this website being used? It was semi-common early on, before I put this recommendation in there, that students would go, this is a great website, but it has far too many ads. Well, I would ask them, well, how is this website making their money? And they would go, well, what do you mean? It says, well, if you think about the website you're on, it takes time and effort to build. It takes money to have it hosted. It takes all these resources to be posted online. Where does the money come from in order to display that? And they looked around and said, well, they don't sell anything on this website. And that was absolutely correct. They didn't. And so the only way that the person could make their money back and pay for it was if they had advertising on the website. Now, I hate web ads as much as the next person, but I recognize them as kind of a necessary evil in some cases. So I never want to say, hey, don't sell this product, or don't list these ads, or don't do this, if it's something that's actually necessary. Because I always want to think about, I need this company to stay in business so I can have them as a client for years in the future. And how long might you have a client as a customer? Well, I had one client as a customer for over 14 years. We redid their website completely from scratch 3 separate times over those 14 years. And we did little incremental changes every few months. It was a great client to have. You might say, well, why did the client end after 14 years? Well, in this particular case, unfortunately, my client got sick and eventually passed away. Clearly, he can't still be a client after that. If that had not have happened, I would like to think that we would still be working together years later. So think about, how's your customer going to make their money? Because you want them to stay in business. If you're just doing something for fun and it's a hobby for you, or maybe a project for school, then you're not thinking about that. But if you're looking at doing this professionally, or working on it through either a side hustle or building out your own stuff, it's a very important consideration you need to have, and definitely needs to be part of a website review. If you see that they could do a better job, you might want to point that out as well.